Yeah. It's like I brought up this showing up in memes a lot because it's like this memes are a giant mind control device, and the more people grow up on the internet, the more susceptible they are. And
Yeah.
the reason for that is because they're able to invoke emotional reactions with minimalism. It's like minimal context, but because they use certain images and words, it can conjure up scenarios in your mind which appeals to the imagination. And remember, imagination, that is the appeal of Ignatius Loyola's spiritual exercises, which are actually more or less like veiled mind control devices. So yeah, like memes are military grade technology in the revolutionary sense for revolutionary dialectics. And
Yeah.
that,
Well, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to create. They're trying to. They know that most people are not going to look into any of this, so there's no point. They know that, and that's what they rely upon. That's why you have a God Shas, because because they know, and I personally think that that's being put there just to insult the people who are willing to believe this stuff, because they know they're never going to look it up.
yes,
And
yeah, and
that's
and the crazy thing is that a lot of these people don't even know it because there's such a wide echo chamber of people just affirming it. And then what's hilarious is those people like, yeah, look, we're the anti-establishment dissidents because we're all circle jerking each other on this
yeah.
bull crap that's not real. But like, so what happens is you have more high schoolers or college kids coming in that they don't really know the context of discernment. It's like education is so compartmentalized. Someone studying even in something
Yeah.
like medicine, a lot of times wouldn't know better. So you go into these comments, so much hype. Like you'll find like a Rabbi Shmuley video where he's doing something obviously evil, and all the comments are ratioing him and quoting the Talmud, and but turns out those Talmud quotes are fake. And it's yeah,
Yeah.
like but well, yeah. The Rabbi Shmuley, that's a completely different conversation. But it's like, yeah, you have really bad Jews that are propped up to actually enforce these optics too, and then it's a freaking mess. And yeah. So the algorithms, comments, all this stuff create manufactured consent in a lot of ways. Also, it's like there's so many bots employed to go like certain comment like in comment sections to inflate certain results. It's like powers that be will end up knowing like what kind of posts are going to get the most attention. So that's like they have bot farms ahead of time preparing for that kind of thing as well. And yeah, it's a
And
little off topic, but you can see that especially in Twitter accounts like freaking Gavin Newsom. Yeah,
you know, and what's funny is just so people are aware, the entire Talmud is online.
but Harley,
You can
it's
actually
big.
go yourself
It's
and
it
read all
takes
of
it
it.
takes a while to read though, so a lot of people aren't going to. Oh yeah, the amount of people who say I've read the Talmud because look at these quotes. See, look, I can use these quotes to slam dunk you. None of them have read it.
Well, I mean, it takes seven. I mean, to read one page a day takes 7.5 years to get through. I mean, they have a big party in every 7.5 years when they complete it. It's called the Siyum Hashas. So they have a huge party whenever they do. They rent out Yankee Stadium or Madison Square Garden and they celebrate it.
Hey, I'm
So
super high IQ and I read it in 3 months. that's that's no, that's
yeah,
how they present it. Like I'm such a
well, that's what that idiot Amaruka told me when he said, "Oh, I read the Talmud," and I said, "Wow, that's impressive. How long did it take you?" And he backpedaled hard. So,
well,
but
it's like the way
he's
they
we're
present it.
not
They,
going to
they
get
make
into
it
that
sound
guy.
like, oh well, I read so much. I just inhale literature, so of course, just the Talmud added in there. That's not a big that's literally the kind of optics they
Yep.
present. Yeah, it's so disingenuous. But
Yep.
yeah, so
So the next one.
yeah. So if this is from Tosaf Jebamov, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right. If you
Tospot Yevamot.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. If you eat with a goy, it's the same as eating with a dog. Yeah, and then they'll even sometimes like I just want to point this out. This Danny is going to give the context, but it's like Jesus when that Canaanite woman approached Jesus to heal her son. Jesus gave it a whole analogy where it's like he pretty much compared her to a dog in the analogy where he was like saying, "Hey, well, I'm the promised one to the Jews, so compared to me, compared to the promised ones that I came to, you're a dog." So it's like a lot of Christians are the ones who end up throwing out these out of context quotes. So it's like if they're using consistent standards, they'd have to condemn Jesus. And yeah, it's like what I said with Jesus. If you haven't read the Gospels, that might sound bad, but like there's a reason that Jesus compared her to a dog. It was a rhetorical point. It wasn't like ontological. Because guess what happened? Like after he discouraged her using those sentiments, she had faith and he still healed her because he was more putting her to the test.
Yeah. So this is a fake quote. The guy who I'm reading this from, he went through the page twice, and there's absolutely nothing even close. It's also confusing because why with a dog specifically? There's no meaning. That has no meaning to us. Dogs are not seen as particularly bad in Judaism. So it's a fake quote.
Yeah. So, yeah, like it's a lot of these are pulled out of thin air. So then, like once you actually look to the real ones, there's some similarities. So it's like they're able to do this with a little bit of plausible deniability. But other things I've seen is when you were talking about like the Talmud being more like disputes between legal code, and it's like you can read what these disputes were saying. I think you were the one who might have showed me this. Is like people were posting these like Jewish encyclopedia quotes where it said the Talmud is like authoritative for practice, and it's like
the most important book.
Yeah, and it was fake. Like they'll use Jewish encyclopedia screenshots, and they're pretty well forged. Like they look like they're like from that website, but it's like they end up being fake too, and people just keep sharing them, and like they get like 18,000 likes on Twitter sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like those accounts obviously bot boosted, but yeah, they're the dissidents. They're the ones against the establishment, despite being bot boosted by algorithms that the establishment control. Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah, Baba Mazia. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right again. So 24A. Yeah, you might want to. Is that how you say it?
Bava Metzia. Yep.
Okay, cool. So if a Jew finds an object lost by a Gentile or a goy, it does not have to be returned. So finders keepers, according to Talmud. So that's why you have so many. That's why you have so many money grubbing Jews clutching their hands together like that happy merchant meme.
Yeah. So this one is again out of context. The closest one to being accurate and at the same time wildly out of context. We start by discussing a case where a man saves a lost object from a wild animal at sea, the flooding of a river, or finds it in a public place. There is a debate. Did the owner despair of finding the object, and as a result, it is considered ownerless, so the person who saved it is permitted to keep it, or does it belong to the original owner? This is actually comes from, I believe, Solomon too. um, the original owner who hopes to retrieve it eventually. Is the item owned or ownerless is the basic gist. And the answer is that if you find in a place where it's a majority of non-Jewish inhabitants, it is considered ownerless, even if it belonged to a Jew in the first place, because it is not in the way of people to get them back. So it has nothing to do with whether the owner of the object isn't Jewish, so you can keep it, but if he was Jewish, you'd give it back. It has to do with whether the majority are likely to give back such a lost items or not, and it is simply not the case in those societies. So if I find $100 in the street, it doesn't matter who dropped it. I mean, would anybody give it back? Is anyone going to go out of their way to try to find it, to try to give it back to the original owner? If I find a gold earring on the subway, do I have to go and try to find who gave it, who lost it? That's basically the gist of it. It doesn't matter what the thing is, what the society is. Doesn't matter what the item is. If it's something, let's say, like, so there was a case of a person who sold on Craigslist. They sold a bureau drawer, so a bureau, like a dresser. Somebody buys it, they pull out the drawers, and they find an envelope with like $80,000 in savings. So in that kind of situation, it wouldn't matter. They would have to give it back, or they would be expected to give it back, because it was something that the owner was like despaired of, like, oh crap, they didn't it was in they didn't mean to, it wasn't one of those things that got lost, um dropping it out of your wallet and walking 50 miles. It was there in your house the whole time. You were probably looking for it. Somebody found it. Now you don't have to give it back. You don't have to say anything at all, but you're supposed to. So it's literally just the concept of finders keepers in Jewish law. So Bava Kama 113a is actually one of my favorite ones when they quote, because it's so freaking stupid that I'm actually going to pull it up right now on Safaria, because it literally, this goes to show how stupid people are and how they don't understand how the Talmud actually works. Part of what the Talmud does is it argues with itself. It'll ask itself questions, give itself different answers before giving an actual saying, okay, this is what we do. So Bava Kama 113a, the answer to the question is actually at the bottom of the same page, which, hold on, Bava Kama.
Nah, you're good. I had it muted and I tried responding, but I'm glad you're pulling it up, because it's like I'm trying to put a little bit of meat on this, because we've only got two more quotes left, but it's like there really are quite a lot of them that people use, and like more and more memes are coming out with it too. More and more Instagram pages are posting it. Actually, Telegram's a pretty big deal for circulating a lot of this stuff also.
Wow. And what's crazy is that a lot of times, if you look, because I'm reading this off somebody who went out of their way to do it themselves. There's another, his name is Shevareshtush, Shev Shevreshtush, and he's a Jew. He's a Jewish legal scholar, and he put this together specifically. And then there's the website. If you want to get into the Yeshu thing, which it's getting a little late, so I don't know how late you want to stay up.
Yeah.
But
Let's do these last two quotes, and then we can go to the one. Yeah, because the Yeshu one, that's the one. That's the one where apparently Jesus is boiling in like a pot of like semen and poop. Which
yeah,
yeah. Because
but it is a little long, because
yeah, we
it's
can
you
do
have
that
to
another.
explain.
We can do that another. Let's just go through the last two quotes that we
Okay.
decided to discuss. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read to you the full section of this part of Bava Kama 113a, so you can actually see how ridiculous this is.
Yeah, and
So
you remember
Rav,
it's Jews. So it's Jews
oh
may use lies to circumvent a goy. So it's this one's actually really big in memes, because you'll see a high profile Jew, someone like Larry Silverstein or George Soros. Then it'll show the Talmud under that. So yeah, use the most evil examples like Emperor Palpatine, George Soros himself, the guy who owned the 9/11 towers. Really evil examples. Then quote the Talmud. So yeah, anyone who reads the Talmud and thinks it's legit, even though you remember they'll frame it like the Talmud's this ultimate authority, when that's not really the context of what it's about. So
yeah.
therefore, anyone who reads this book is George Soros. Like that's how it works.
It's true. So I'm going to read what he writes quick, and then I'm going to actually read Bava Kama 113 says. So the context of it is, there's I don't, let me just make sure that he wrote it. Yeah, because I was gonna say this, it's about, so this is a discussion that has to do with tax collectors who are ripping off people at the time and enriching themselves on the back of citizens by claiming the taxes didn't belong to them. Doesn't matter if it's Jewish or not. So the discussion here is whether you're allowed to lie in order to protect yourself and your money from thieves, the same way you'd be allowed to lie and circumvent a non-Jew, whether you were hiding a Jew during World War II. So I'm going to read the full quote. Rav Ashi said, the Mishnah issues a ruling with regard to a Gentile customs collector whom one may deceive, as it is taught in the Baraita, in the case of a Jew and a Gentile who approach the court for judgment in a legal dispute. Okay? So this is a Jew and a Gentile going to a Jewish court. If you can vindicate the Jew under Jewish law, vindicate him and say to the Gentile, this is our law. If he can be vindicated under Gentile law, vindicate him. This is talking about the Jew. vindicate him and say to the Gentile, this is your law. And if it is not possible to vindicate him under either system of law, one approaches the case circuitously, seeking justification to vindicate the Jew. This is the statement of Rabbi Ishmael. Okay, so they only get to that point. So the actual answer to this is Rabbi Akiva disagrees and says one does not approach the case circuitously in order to vindicate the Jew due to the sanctification of God's name, as God's name will be desecrated if the Jewish judge employs dishonest means.
Yeah, that's a complete kill shot against the way they present it. Also, I'm glad you read that.
Yeah. So that's basically saying, like, if you and I, if I was an Orthodox Jew and you decided to take me to a Jewish court, which you could file a lawsuit against me in a Jewish court, they would be required under Bava Kama 113a to make sure that you get fair representation, and if they didn't, it would be desecrating God's law. So no, you're not allowed to lie to protect, and you're not allowed to use a Jewish court for dishonest means.
So yeah, no, I'm glad you read that, because it's, yeah, like I said, it gets taken out of context a lot, and it's one of the most popular ones to be used in memes. So that actually makes it pretty thorough. So this is on the last one, and I actually wanted to go to bed about 20 minutes ago, so we can wrap it up. We can wrap it up after this.
Yep.
So
Sure.
this one doesn't appear in memes in isolation as much, but I have seen it. I have seen it in compilation. So like we read other ones earlier where it's like, oh my gosh, look, the Talmud compares average people, goys, to animals. So this one sort of used in compilation, because sometimes you'll have memes that'll like show maybe 5 of these quotes, and they'll be posted in like comments to something. Here's the one. So think around the theme of like, oh my gosh, you're comparing Gentiles to animals. It says aboda zarha. So yeah, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right.
Avodah
Yeah,
Zarah.
22a to 22b. So Gentiles prefer sex with cows. So that's how Jews see Gentile. You're just animals, and that's why I like mating with them.
Yeah. So once again, you got to remember that Jews lived long before Christians. And there were a lot of different types of cultures, including today, where certain things are allowed that are not supposed to be. So this is a mistranslation out of context. Basically, it says that you're not allowed to leave your animals alone, which most people don't really have animals these days. So once again, you're not allowed to leave your animals alone in the inns of non-Jews at the time, since you're putting a stumbling block in front of the blind, as they are commonly engaged in bestiality back then. I mean, I don't. Now he continues with, I mean, I don't think there's much to say about this. It's clear that in many places in the world, just as common today as it was back then, and even more in rural areas of the developed world, it's still something that happens. So basically, according to Jewish law, you're not supposed to put a stumbling block in front of the blind. That's an expression that's used to say that you're not supposed to, just because somebody's susceptible, their culture might permit bestiality, which unfortunately some do, you're not supposed to put them in a position where they can act upon it. So in some cultures, if you left your animals out, someone might decide to molest them. And once again, we live in the Judeo-Christian world where that kind of stuff is looked down upon, and it was never acceptable in the Christian world anyway. So once again, this is not referring to Christians.
Well, yeah, it commits apart the whole fallacy, because what it does, it's referring to specific contexts. So then, like, oh well, it's referring to Gentiles. That's goy. That's the people that are beneath the Jews. So it's like, but it's like this kind of thing still happens today, right? It's just,
Yeah.
it's optics. It's optics make it look as bad as possible, and tack it on to like other preconceived notions. And by the way, another reason why it's easy to do this is because there's like a lot of historic forgeries. There's this genre like around JQ. It's littered with forgeries left and right. So then, because there's so many forgeries, it's like you can go back to the 1800s, you can go back to 1700s, you can go back to 1600s. You can find a bunch of quotes. It's like, hey, wait a second, all our ancestors were saying the same thing, and now all of a sudden, after World War II, with the fake Holocaust, all of a sudden now we're our ancestors are wrong. No, like let's return to tradition. Listen, like it's so many, it's like so many things like tacked onto each other that just make it look so believable to people. But it's like, once you start going back and like questioning your assumptions and like, wait, why did I swallow this? Like, wait a second, that a lot of that was like aesthetics, not essentials. Like, it's, yeah, that's why I want to point this
I
out.
would say I would say also something like this. This, let's say, so first I was going to say that I lived in Israel for a couple of years, and let me just say that in certain communities out there, especially in the rural ones, this still happens, and they're not
Yes.
shy about it. So I'm not going to get into the specifics of that. All I'm going to say is it still happens in the world. Now, this kind of law would probably also exist in like Hindu culture, where cows would be, if there was a culture where that lived amongst Hindus that didn't respect cows and would do stuff like this, I'm sure there would be a similar law where you don't put to protect the sanctity of the cow. In this case, it's not. It would be for different reasons. One, because the Hindus look at the cow as a holy creature. Jews, because you're not supposed to put a stumbling block in front of the blind. So you're not supposed to, just because someone's susceptible to something doesn't mean you should give them the means to do it. There in their case, but this is really just saying, like, some cultures are a little gross. Don't allow them to violate your animals.
Yeah, yeah. Like again, it's like, and then they make it sound like it's talking about like literally every single Gentile, and you can get a pretty easy knee jerk reaction from it. So yeah, like in terms of how meme culture makes all this relatable, I think I did a good job wrapping that up. Do you have anything you want to add to that? Because this is really why I'm covering this. Is like, I'm actually, you know this, but a lot of people, it turns out a lot of people think I'm actually like Gen X or something. I'm actually Gen Z. It's like I'm
Yeah,
I'm
you
look
shocked me with that.
well, I'm looking at, because what I'm doing is I'm trying to analyze where I see people my age range going, because I realize that like I'm a little bit ahead of the curve, because it's like even before I started researching this stuff, it's like I had a good idea on how people were going to be thinking, maybe like 5 or 10 years down the road. So I just sort of like honed that skill around the time I started doing analysis. And that's why I'm looking at memes so much. And it turns out that if you want to look at where the future's going, that's a good way to look at it, because that's the social engineering, that's a preparation of the environment. It's like the kind of memes I was looking at in 2016. I was thinking, hey, this is just like internet stuff, and then this becomes the consensus by like 2020, and then 2025. It's like the kind of memes that were around like 2019. Like,
Yeah,
memes about like, because like Gen Z guys, we were posting memes about Epstein, like, oh my gosh, Alex Jones, ha ha ha, irony, humor. Epstein didn't kill himself, and then all of a sudden that becomes like mainstream discourse. So yeah, yeah, and it's the
yeah.
same thing going on with the Jewish question. It's like
And
yeah.
And I was gonna say also, I mean, because there's a website, the original website that was debunking the Talmud stuff was in from the early 2000s. It's an Angel Fire website that's still active, that I sent you as well, that we can read, that I'll read off the Jesus thing from. And this used to go around memes back when I was growing up, because I'm obviously a few years older than you. But when I was growing up, the memes that we had were internet chains and all this stuff that people are looking at and being like, whoa, we just got this Talmud stuff now. It was going around in groups. It was going around through email chains, sending it on, sending it on. So that's why somebody in the early 2000s put together a website debunking this. And now that we have social media to the extent that we do, they've become memed, and now they just go around as memes. So none of this stuff is new. and it's just now reaching a wider audience of people who are a lot more, unfortunately, not gonna look
Susceptible.
in. They're not gonna
No,
look
it's
into
because
things.
you're dealing with people who have grown up on algorithms that are meant to like short circuit your brain's like
Right.
natural reward consequence system. So there's been a lot of operational preparation of the environment leading up to this. Also, it's like I can't even, when it comes to a lot of these Gen Z people, it's like I sympathize, because it's like I was doing the same bullshit just 2 years ago. It's like I would like what I was doing is I was cramming my head with a bunch of knowledge, but the kind of stuff I was looking into was just sort of disconnected facts, and it didn't even start clicking until like about a year ago. It's like, wait a second, I already knew all this, but I didn't know. It's really hard to explain, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like a lot of this stuff, it's designed to elicit an emotional response. It's designed to fortify the idea that you're controlled by Jews, and that, Jews have this built-in need to destroy white people and destroy cultures and all this other stuff. And historically it isn't true, because I mean, like I always bring up, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but as I always bring up, the refugee crisis that we have in Europe right now, we had back in the 1500s, in the 15th and 15th and 16th century, when hundreds of thousands of Spanish Jews spread all across Europe, from Spain going and Portugal, going as far south as the Balkans and as far north as Trondheim, Norway. And did they usurp the societies? No. What did they do? They contributed, but they maintained their culture while assimilating into their local culture. And so that happened once before. We had the first refugee crisis in Europe was Spanish Jews, in my opinion. That's as far as I can tell.
I'd say go back early around the time of Charlemagne. It's like there's actually a lot of parallels between Charlemagne and like Islam ethics, and you even see like Muslim words coming up with some of the founding Templar, because this happened back in the time of like the whole conquest of Spain by the Muslims, but you actually had quite a bit of them actually going up north, and they even impacted the way that like the Northern European Germanic languages formed, and that's something hardly anyone talks about.
True. Well, I mean, Baphomet was supposedly another word for Muhammad. So yeah, the Templar.
I haven't heard that, but it's just like you had Arabs and Moors going further up Europe around the 600s to 800s, and even integrating in Christian culture a good bit than people talk about.
Yeah,
It's
this is
like
true.
even Hugh de Payens. Hugh de Payens, who found the Knights Templar. His grandfather was Tybalt de Payens. He was a straight up Moor. He was like a straight up Moor. He wasn't even a Christian. Like actually, like Hugh de Payens, he was both like a Gnostic Christian, but also was initiated into the Moorish traditions. Like this is a little bit off topic, but it's I'd say there was a little bit of a it wasn't enough to permanently like change the kind of like phenotypes they see in Europe. Obviously, like they end up looking more Northern European, but that influence in those cultures did make it pretty far north.
Right. Yeah, no, they were, yeah, this is true. But yeah, this is all these all this stuff is designed to make people believe that Jews are part of the power structure, and it's laid out
Well, they
in
are
their
part. It's
writing.
just I want it's
They're
not the
part of the I mean,
yeah
not
yeah
they're the power structure.
yeah.
That's what I
It's
meant
not
to say.
exclusively Jewish. I'd say it's Hermetic and Gnostic, and those things can use different operating systems, and they have integrated a lot of Jewish components from Kabbalah. But once you like lift up the hood, there's a good bit more going in. Like you have a good bit of like Zoroastrianism in there. Obviously the Gnosticism, Hermeticism I brought up, and Sufi Islam. It's
Well,
like
that
there's yeah,
yeah. And that's what
there's
I try to explain to people, is that once you get to a high enough, like a certain level, you're not dealing with, you know, Judaism or Christianity, or Islam. These people are practicing something very different. And whatever they may outwardly claim, or whatever they may have been before, like the Rothschilds are not Jewish. They probably haven't been Jewish for about 300 years
they're
maybe.
pretty much atheists.
Yeah. Or if anything, they're they're practicing some kind of a cult, or they're worshiping old gods. Because that's all right. Well, yeah, that's a whole topic. Because there's another topic of why the Jews are utilized, but that's a whole another topic that'll keep us here for another 3 hours, and so I don't want to hold us all up. But
Yeah, we can go
there's
back
still a
into more
lot more to go
details.
through.
We can go back into more details with Jacob Frank once you're done. And honestly, I gotta read more of the stuff you sent. It's like before this, I was able to read enough and take some notes and stuff, but like I'm able to collaborate with other things that I've read, but we can definitely work on some more and then link back up.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that there's a very important understanding of why Jews became the scapegoat, like for like how it
Well, in
happened,
other
why
regions,
Rome did it.
Armenians. Yeah, yeah. I gotta read it more on the Armenians because I've been reading into the Armenians and their interface with Ottoman culture and some of these Middle Eastern civilizations, and it's like they had diasporas, and there's quite a
Yeah,
lot of parallels. Like they were made like court bankers,
yeah,
and they were used to take the blame for a bunch of the crimes of like the Ottomans or Arabs, and they'd end up getting genocided for it's very very similar. So it's like this is a playbook that's even used on other races. It's just
yeah.
we're in a Western context. We're in a Western context, and our feedback system is Western centric. So the Jews are going to come up more in our context.
And contrary to what people want to say, like, we don't live in the Judeo. We do live in the Judeo-Christian, because the Old Testament law is a big part of Western law. The whole Western understanding of what morality comes from the Old Testament, and then the New Testament, which is based on the Old Testament from the Torah. So we do live in a Judeo-Christian society, which is why we have marriage with wedlock, why we have that. That's not a common thing in ancient cultures. I mean, yeah, you could get
Yeah.
married to
Oh,
one
one thing.
woman,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but sex was sex. I mean, you would, and even the way gods worked, it was more the Jewish God put. That's why I try to say, like, Judaism, there's sexual immorality is punishable by death in Judaism. So compare that. The Jews were very prude compared to the pre-Christian cultures that they grew up around, and it even shows up in the book of in Lot, in when they go to when they go what is it, bloody hell, when they go to
Sodom and Gomorrah.
Sodom and Gomorrah, right? There you go. So you see, I'm getting tired now. But
I am too,
that's a
dude.
good example. They want to sleep with daughters. They want to stay because they practice sexual hospitality, and that was a common theme. That was a big thing in ancient cultures, because sex was not seen as between one man, one woman. Sex is amazing. Why would you want to stick to one man or one woman? Why would you want to have? Why not? If you're prostate, and sorry to be graphic, but for a man, the prostate is in the ass. So why would you, if that's the way you can get the ultimate pleasure, why would you deny yourself that? There's nothing wrong with that, according to many ancient cultures. Whereas Judaism, you do have that sexual taboo, and there's a lot of that's why married women, you can't have, it's a death penalty for having sex with a married woman. If you have a child out of wedlock, a mum's baby has a lot of very is not something you want to be. So so even your children are affected by your sexual taboo, by your sexual immorality. So this is why, like, when people talk about these things, it's like, listen, human nature is human nature. A society is going to have its good and it's going to have its bad. And you know what? That's where people don't understand that they when a Christian priest, when a Christian pastor does something immoral, it's not considered the look of all of Christianity. You look at that as, this guy did something stupid, but he did something that was antithetical to what he's supposed to believe, or what's his culture, what his society, what his culture, what his religion believes in. And that's the same thing with Jews. If a Jewish person does something, goes to a prostitute or does something immoral, he's violating his law in the same way that if I drink a bottle of vodka and get behind the wheel of my car, I'm violating the law. It's not every American's a drunk driver. I'm an idiot, but for drinking and driving. And this one simple cognitive dissonance that people don't realize, like, wait a second, why am I saying that every Jew must be like this one Jew when I don't say that every Christian must be like this Christian? And and that's a very important, very simple mindset that I don't understand how people have lost, which I think, it goes back to the meme culture that, people are looking for very simple emotional answers. And that's what they seek. They don't want, that's why even if you look at the comments thread on where I read these Talmud quotes off of, the responses that these guys are getting, that this guy gets, are just ridiculous, because it's like, dude, this is being like, you're asking. One of the guys says, oh, why are Jews and Gentiles have different treated differently? And some guy responds, spot on. What? Like, if you get if let's say I commit a crime and I'm a civilian, I get charged with something. Now, let's say police officers, they get charged with a crime, they get charged with a different crime too, because it's under the color of law, because something else is expected of them, because they're enforcing the law. They should be following it to the even more so than the average person. So Jews have their own legal system. If you choose to become part of that legal system and opt into it, then you're held to a different standard than someone who's not. So, and then if you choose to leave a separate system and enter into the Jewish legal system, well, you've chosen to do it. You're expected. There's a famous Jewish rapper, a black guy, who was accepted into the Hasidic Jewish community, and he left it, and he was a homosexual and a few other things. Nothing really that bad, just mostly a homosexual, and I think he became an atheist, or I don't know his whole story. It's been a few years, but people got angry at him because he was supposed to be held to a higher standard, because he chose to join the community. He chose to go through the process of conversion. He was accepted into a Hasidic community. He was welcomed in and treated, because if you convert to Judaism, you are considered as part of the nation. That's why I go back to, there's no such thing. And that's one of the things that I gotta always, with Eric John Phelps also, there is no Jewish race. There is no racial Jewish, Hebrew, Israelite, yada, yada, yada. It doesn't exist. Judaism is like America. It's a nation that you can join or you can leave. You can emigrate to the United States, take an oath to the Constitution, and become an American. I can go from an American, I can go move to Europe, and I can go become a Greek. And I may still be of American descent. I may have been born in America. I may speak English as a first language, but now I'm Greek. And my children are going to be raised as Greeks. So it's a very similar thing. Even for and this is what I don't understand, why people, they believe this whole racial Jewish. There is no Jewish race. Judaism is simply a religious legal system that you can join or you can leave it. You can opt into it, you can opt out of it. You can violate the laws, you can uphold the laws. It's the same as any other legal system.
Yeah, I'm glad that you pointed that out, because like I said, it's framed like this is just ipso facto doctrine that you have to accept, and every Jew accepts. Like you said earlier, it's like whenever they end up finishing reading the Talmud, it's a pretty big deal for their communities. But yeah, there's a little bit more that we can get into, but it's coming up on 146, and it's like I'm getting to the point where I'm too tired to even come up